I'm your host, Scott Norton, and welcome to At Large. On this show, I talk to world-class creatives who use business to bring their ideas to life. We'll hear about their creative practices, their most interesting stories, and the lessons that'll inspire you the way that they've inspired me. Many people have been called the father of modern advertising. But today, you're going to hear from the man I call the father of postmodern advertising. Alex Bogusky was named Creative Director of the Decade by Ad Age for the work he led as partner at his agency, Crispen Porter and Bogusky. His work has received countless awards, and he's in the Hall of Fame for both the Art Directors Club and the American Advertising Federation. Alex is best known for launching the Mini Cooper in America, anti-smoking ads for the Truth campaign that enraged Big Tobacco, ads for Domino's Pizza that ignited an 80-fold increase in their stock price, and arguably his most groundbreaking work, Subservient Chicken, one of the first digitally native campaigns to go viral online, which changed marketing forever. This is an episode with 2 chapters. In Chapter 1, we'll talk to Alex about the creative process that went into his best-known campaigns. In Chapter 2, we'll talk about his spiritual journey of finding peace and healing after the death of someone very close to him. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you from Boulder, Colorado, Alex Bogusky. Well, Alex, good morning. It's
good morning.
Wonderful to have you here.
Yeah. Thanks for coming to Boulder.
Yeah. Thanks for making the time.
Of course.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
And you have, do you still have your shed studio? Because I was watching some of your videos that you've got this clubhouse with particle board studios and things. What was that?
It was a particle board. Yeah, it was just a little shed that we built just to manage the sound because we were doing some podcasts from the agency. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I wish I knew where it was.
So that was a CP&B office, basically?
Yeah, that was in the offices, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to start with kind of a personal history. So I think I was 15 or 16 at the time, and I was over at a friend's house, and he was like, dude, you got to watch this. And I was like, what are we about to see? And he's like, oh, it's an ad. And I was like, we're going to watch an advertisement? And so he pulls up, this is probably Google videos in 2002, 2003, maybe even before YouTube. And he plays the IKEA lamp video, the spot that you did with Spike Jonze.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember watching it and thinking, I've never seen anything like this. And I don't know what this is, but I
love that reaction. That's great.
I want this in my life. Whatever this is, who's ever behind this, I was like, I want to go to IKEA. Europe looks sweet. I want to go to Europe. Yeah. And whose job is it to figure out, to make these movies? Because this is the coolest thing ever. And that blew my mind, and I felt deeply that I knew that I would somehow end up in advertising.
Yeah. I remember being that age, about 17, and watching a Wyden commercial. And it was, I don't know, I don't remember, I think it might have been the Bo Nose or something like that. And having the same reaction. It isn't an art form that doesn't want to change, right? It's this thing that I thought was very malleable and you could change it anytime you wanted to. Sometimes I felt like other people respected it so much that they sort of saw the form as it was and didn't want to deviate from the structure.
That sparked this feeling in me I'm attracted to this world.
Well, I'm sorry about that, but
it worked out.
I didn't mean that.
It worked out. I didn't become an ad man, but
good,
I'm in that world. And so tell me, in your personal history, so you saw some of these things, but talk to me about how you went from growing up to actually finding yourself in this business and in doing creative work for brands.
My parents were both designers, graphic designers. So it was our family business, graphic design. And my dad had a pretty big studio with 20 people. My mom was an art director at some industry magazines. And for me, it was the last thing I wanted to do because it's the family business.
Right.
It's if you make shoes, you don't want to make shoes. If you're in the cement business, you don't want to do the cement business.
Right. Yeah.
So I was hoping for something else, and I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And so my parents weren't interested in paying for college, and my mom said, well, there was just no sign that it would be a good investment, which I think is true. I don't think it was. I was just a kind of a wild kid, but then I ran into a friend, and he said he had he went into the Air Force, and I thought, I'll go into the Air Force, I'll fly planes, then I'll be a commercial pilot, and he had done that path, and he said, oh no, I hate it. Basically, I thought, okay, well, now what am I going to do? Mm-hmm. And I was racing motorcycles, and that was kind of coming to an end. Later, I run into the pilot, and I said, hey, this is 10 years later. I'm like, hey, thanks for that advice, steering me right. He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, you told me that you didn't like your job and didn't like being a pilot. He's like, what? I love it. I love it. I work 3 days, then I'm in Hawaii 5 days, then I work 3 days, and I'm in Hawaii 5 days. It's the best thing ever. And
you just caught him on a bad day.
Yeah, exactly. I tell a lot of people that story before I give them advice. Yeah, so anyone who's listening to this and thinks that there is advice within, be wary, right?
Yeah.
You got to.
Yeah, it could be a good day, it could be a bad day.
Yeah, you just don't know. And I was like, you ruined my life. I'm in advertising now,
Oh, wow. So did you end up going to art school?
I did. I went to a little bit of art school in Atlanta with this friend of mine. And I
SCAD or?
No, Art Institute.
Okay.
Art Institute of Atlanta.
Uh-huh.
And I dropped out. And then I went a little bit to the Art Institute in Fort Lauderdale.
So then you are like designing a pamphlet for your buddy's windsurfing company, which is
it was actually a catalog.
Sweet gig. A catalog.
Yeah.
And then how did that turn into like bigger scale stuff?
I was free. All I wanted to do was windsurf. So I had been a motorcycle racer, and then I was a windsurfer. Right. This is how I sort of thought of myself. So I was doing freelance stuff to make ends meet, but not thinking of it as a career so much. Mm-hmm. And I was in Hawaii for a few months, and I had decided that I was going to stay and just be a windsurfer, and whatever that sort of turned into. It was really early days of like wave sailing, and my dad kind of panicked. He wanted me to come home, and I said, well, there's nothing there, like sell my car, send out the money. And he said, I'll get you an interview at an agency, if you come back. And if it doesn't work out, go back to Hawaii. So there was a strike, and it was hard to get a flight. But anyway, I got a flight and came back, and fortunately or unfortunately, did the interview, got the job, and was suddenly in advertising, which was a totally different world. I didn't know how different it was. Like the guy that hired me, my old boss, he said, are you an art director or are you a designer? Because he's looking at my book and he can't tell. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what, they're different. They're two different things. I didn't know. I didn't understand.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So we're going to talk about some of your great work a little later on in the show. And I'm curious, before we do that, how do you think about the secret that you understand that other people don't? Like, what do you think it is that you see that other people don't, that has informed and enabled your work in advertising?
Always the secret is truth. Like, if you can find something that's true that no one's saying, it's really hard to do. But every category over time becomes calcified with these norms of presentation and style and language, and it becomes very sterile. So all these conventions just prevent anything from actually touching the viewer who you're speaking with, right? Mm-hmm. If I just bullshit you, I'm not going to ever touch you. It's essentially that.
Right.
So finding that like nugget of truth. So with something like Domino's, where the nugget of truth was their pizza tasted pretty bad, right?
Like cardboard, as they said.
Cardboard was the big thing, yeah. And so they wanted to do a campaign about their new and improved pizza, with the idea being that, like, we've improved it even though it was already awesome, right? I mean, how often do you hear that kind of advertising?
Right.
Right? Always. It's
yes.
like, it was, as good as it was, we made it better.
Right, exactly. Like, same great flavor.
Why
now
would
with more enhanced crystals.
Yeah. Like, if your mom makes something and decides to make it better, there's a reason. Like, there were complaints, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, they were very brave as a client, but we brought them that idea of just like, well, let's just put up the Twitter comments and read the Twitter comments of what people are saying. Then there's that truth. So now you have a foundation of truth. Like, it needs improvement, and we're improving, right? And as soon as you do that, like, everyone's, their guard comes down. And so you get a chance to then put out your message in a way that they're not trying to resist it, that the consumer's not trying to resist it. So that was always my thing, was just look for truth. I mean, we did the truth campaign, the tobacco campaign.
Yes.
It's probably not a coincidence that it's called that.
And that was some of your earlier work, right? What year was that, 98?
Yeah, it was early. It was the first time we had a actual decent budget, actually. And It was just in Florida that we started it. But then as it became a national campaign, once the money for the national settlement, the tobacco companies settled with the AGs in one national settlement, and that created a pool of like $1 billion.
And so part of that $1 billion was the government used.
All of it had to be spent to talk to youth about not smoking.
Oh, all of it?
All of it, yeah. Now, not at once, but over time.
Right.
That's how that was the stipulation. And we realized early on, even in Florida, where that was the stipulation. Like, you have to tell kids not to smoke with this money. This is what the cigarette companies are saying. We'll settle with you as long as you use the money this way. Now,
that was suggested by the cigarette company.
It was demanded. It was in the settlement.
I feel like that's one of the rare cases of, like, democracy and our legal system actually working.
But that stipulation in the settlement, they knew that when you tell kids not to smoke, they will smoke.
Because it's more airtime for smoking.
No, because when you're young, you're building a self separate from others, right? And so a big part of that is doing what other people say not to do. It's an act of rebellion. Whereas people who are older, they think the fact that cigarettes could kill you is a product problem, right?
Deterrent.
Yeah. It's not at all. It's actually a unique selling proposition to a young person who's trying to say, I am in control of my life. Look, I'm quite literally in control of my life. And so that stipulation, when we noticed that was in there, and then we noticed through our research what would happen if we did that kind of advertising that the CDC was recommending, we realized smoking rates were going to go up. The money was going to actually be advertising for the tobacco companies. So that was a big concern, and that's how we looked. That's how we ultimately developed the brand of truth, which was more of, here's the information, right? And don't fall for the same thing that your parents fell for and their parents fell for. And as a brand, it was a rebellion against this corporate push, right? Yeah.
And so one of the ads that you produced as part of that campaign was a truck pulling up in front of a big tobacco company, and dumping 1,200 body bags filled with some kind of filler, which represented the 1,200 people per day that died of smoking-related illness.
Yeah.
And right after that, the tobacco companies contacted the government and said, this actually violates the spirit of our agreement.
Exactly.
And what they're saying is, oh, we didn't want you to actually be effective.
Well, what they're saying in the second settlement, the national settlement, they added a clause because of what we had done in Florida, where we vilified the companies. So the work in Florida didn't violate that, but they put a non-vilification clause in the national settlement.
I see.
So the client was very brave and was letting us go right up to the edge of it, and sometimes a little past the edge, especially like early like that.
Yeah.
And we would just play with that edge the best that we could.
The other thing I noticed, and my dad worked in like corporate communications. He's a director, and so we always share each other fun stuff that we like to watch.
Yeah.
And I showed him a bunch of your stuff, and he's like, he's does community theater, and he's an actor too.
Awesome.
And he says, sometimes when I was being directed this theater, the director would say, "Find the love in the scene." Mm-hmm. And my dad said, I never really knew what that meant. I tried to feel it. I never really knew what it meant. But when I watch Alex's stuff, I see it. I see love. The people who love driving, you show the love of driving and the excitement, right? And that's how you sell the Volkswagen car. And in the case of the Whopper, people love the Whopper. Mm-hmm. And by taking that away and showing people's reactions of when something they've loved has been read
they
for them.
didn't realize that was the whole. Yeah, they didn't realize how much they love this thing. So if
you don't have to sell the item, you just show the love for
what
it.
would happen? Yeah.
But I noticed that by showcasing that love, which is in a way a form of truth,
this is a really
the story
good,
tells itself.
You almost made me cry by saying that. Actually, you did make me cry a little bit, like the love piece. With tobacco, one of the things that we never wanted to be anti-smoker. That's what so much of that messaging can be.
Right.
So we love everyone. This is in the tenets. We love everyone, including smokers.
Yeah.
And so the love is definitely a big part of the work. And so you would ask about, like, what's the secret sauce? The other piece that you remind me of is I always felt like when I had a new client, they never knew what they were. And what they were was so beautiful and amazing. And I just had to find that and then show it to them. And they would fall in love with themselves, right? And they would fall in love with the work and that like expression of the work.
Yes.
So often it was almost like a company-wide intervention is really what would be happening.
Because
it was so fun.
People get trapped in their own challenges.
Yeah.
They get trapped in their own business model. And you basically get to show up as an outsider and be like, you find the truth and you find the love.
Yeah.
And you hold up a mirror.
Yeah.
And the people at those companies go, holy shit, this is important.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. What I do matters.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I want to talk about the Subservient Chicken campaign because, for a lot of listeners, they won't have ever seen it.
Sure. This is like antique advertising we're talking about now.
But at the same time, so that campaign was 2004.
Okay.
And I think it set the stage for basically a new format of advertising. Because it was, at that time, Facebook was only available to people with a .edu email address.
Okay.
Twitter, I think perhaps hadn't even launched yet.
Yeah.
People were on AOL Instant Messenger.
Yeah, like basically marketing in those days, it was microsites. You'd make microsites, they called them.
Yes.
Right? And you'd direct people to the microsite.
And so tell us, like, how did the idea for Subservient Chicken come about, and what was it?
It was literally just an extrapolation of chicken your way. So what would be the most extreme example of chicken one way? And we came up with this sexy chicken, that was obviously a play on the naughty websites that were like, just starting to happen. And I guess within these websites, you'd ask for these things and people would do these things. And so this was a chicken version of that.
When you say it's sexy chicken, it was actually like a guy in a chicken suit.
Kind of, yeah.
Like,
it wasn't sexy at all. No.
But it was.
How sexy can a chicken get, I guess?
It had a kind of an eyebrow-raising name to it.
Yeah.
And then the interface was almost like a play off of this like new format of.
Well, kind of back to your previous question. So we presented everything, including the site, the microsite. We're very excited about that. But there's also 3 commercials or something in the package that go with it.
Right.
So it's going to be a broadcast campaign.
Right.
And it was.
Yeah. Because you got to get the word out there too.
Well, I mean, to some degree, but if I was doing it, I would definitely change the emphasis in terms of the budget and spend less on the TV. But at that point, the client was very TV centric, and they didn't want to do the website part, right? So I couldn't get the budget to do that. I couldn't pull any budget aside. So essentially what we did is while we were shooting the commercials, we got another room in the hotel where we were shooting the commercials, and we would just run downstairs and start shooting that and then run back up to the commercials and kept the client in the dark about the whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So run and gun and because you knew it was going to be essential to the total package.
I mean, it's the thing. And for me, I was always, new business is not about, hey, we need business. Like, let's start calling some people. New business is when you have a client, you do something that's so interesting and forward thinking that you get new business. Your execution of the work with your current clients, that's new business.
Right. Right.
If you're running out of business, it's really late.
Right.
Right.
That's right.
So each time I had a client and it was new in the door, I knew there were certain things that were happening within the culture that I wanted to do the first work that was like this, the first work that was like this. So I had this sort of agenda running to accomplish with the work. So in this case, we're spending our own money to get this thing made.
Wow.
Right. And that's just an investment. That's R&D.
Yeah.
That is new business.
Right.
I'd rather spend it that way.
Yeah.
And
it worked brilliantly.
it works. It works. And so we launched that, and no one's ever seen the commercials. No one thinks about the commercials. It's just that.
Right.
Yeah.
Just the site.
Just the site.
Wow. What was, I mean, I could say what is, but I'm curious about as a team.
You want to hear an interesting thing about the site?
Always.
The people were amazed that whatever they would type in, the chicken would do, right? And because we wanted it to seem live, right? I think that's why it went so viral. Is like, check this out,
Yeah.
And what we realized was we asked everyone in the agency to come up with a certain amount of requests. Like, we sent just a screenshot. What would you have this chicken do? And people put in stuff. It's something like 500. We stopped getting any new ideas.
Oh, wow.
And so when people would say, like, hit a baseball, that's at the end. That's at the long tail.
Right.
And we knew what those questions were at the long tail.
Wow. So you could take a relatively small sample size and then capture all of these weird things that you would expect people to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when they'd freak out because there were a lot
like,
of naughty things
real.
They'd ask it to do, and it would just go like, no.
Yeah. I was going to say, you have a default no.
Exactly.
Like,
there was a no. Yeah.
So I'd love to understand your creative process. And I'm curious, like, do you have you have a formula? Do you have a discipline? What was the creative process that you employed as a team at Crispen Porter and Bogusky?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. And you can talk about it personally, or you can talk about it organizationally.
Yeah. We were really lucky, I think, that early on, like you said, we did the Truth Campaign. That was the first time we had a lot of budget, which meant it was the first time we had to have multiple teams working on something. Have you worked in an agency?
No, I never have.
There's a lot of people, and there's a lot within the culture, this idea of my idea, this concept of my idea.
Yes.
Right. And there are desks with like scripts locked in the desk, and people will like pull them out and try to like use them for multiple clients, the same script. There's this preciousness that exists around ideas. And anytime you create scarcity within the mind, that becomes real. And so people that are very close and hide their work because they think I might not have another good idea, they're right. their ability to produce good ideas goes down.
The scarcity mindset is a spiral.
Yeah. And you can't, so it's self-perpetuating. And so there's a lot of that in agencies. And I inherited people that had worked in other agencies. And so I dealt with that as a creative director, this idea. Now with Truth, we suddenly had to have multiple people working on things. There was a lot to learn about the category and just to understand all the mindset of smokers or potential smokers at different ages and the history and all the work that's been done. So we would put teams on things, and there was this understanding. The way we worked was if someone finds a vein that's really rich, everyone mines the vein. So like with Subservient chicken, as soon as that is found, you don't own it anymore. And that takes a kind of level of maturity, security, or something.
Yes, psychological safety.
Yeah, to be able to do that. So that was the way that we sort of demanded people work. We were lucky though that we had Truth, because with Truth, when people were saying, no, this is my idea, I don't really want so-and-so. Well, he named it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you mean it's your idea? Like, this whole campaign is a creation of this group. There is no product except this campaign. Mm-hmm. And he already made the thing you're working on. And now you're telling me the script is yours?
Mm-hmm.
You have no ownership here. Like, and so and then through that process of being able to do that, no one could compete with us because we could, anytime we were pitching, the ability to switch and find and then put like more resources on those sweet spots, you could just feel it like other agencies. There was a period of time where you're like, they just can't hang. There's no way.
Because it was teams against individuals.
Yeah. People don't realize, and they're not always told, the success that I want for them outstrips anything they can imagine. Because it's going to work for me. I'm not here to hold you back. I'm like, this is your dream come true.
Yes.
Now, that's a lot of pressure, unfortunately. That's the one unfortunate part of that, is it's so much pressure. I would see people just crush themselves under that particular pressure. Because it's not an outsider that ever puts the pressure on you. It's actually within.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so there was a lot of pressure within the system, but it was more of a pressure that was coming from the fact that, yeah, we really want you to succeed. Like, this is going to be good.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do right by yourself, achieve your potential, live your potential, exceed it. And that's going to be good for everyone.
And be like the best individual that you can be within the team, right? So the thing that would get you fired like instantly is if you lied. Like that was you. There's no coming back from that one. Mm-hmm. Because how can we work if...
Especially in a company that celebrates and lives and dies on truth. like literally and figuratively.
Yeah. If you deceive, then you like undo the foundation of reality that you're working on. Not that that's really reality, but there's a foundation that you're working on.
Right.
And so...
People can't trust each other.
No, if you say that you said, told a client this, or the client said this, and it's not true.
Yeah.
Sometimes account people would do that. It's just easier to say the client said. They may feel it themselves. They say that it's like, whoa.
What do you see as the role of research, and what do you need to understand about the customer target before you go into a creative process?
That's a good question. I always liked, again, I'm hunting for that like kernel of truth that's so true of the category that no one's really noticed though.
Yeah.
And we had in advertising they call it the planning department. The research is called the planning department.
Yeah, which I always thought was funny.
It is funny.
Yeah, some people call it strategy too.
Strategy, but you probably could go to school for strategy, but at the time no one was going to school for planning. Mm-hmm. But then people would say, I'm a planner. Mm-hmm. Often they were account people who then moved into planning for whatever reason. But I really like the social sciences. So I would try to hire sociologists and other social scientists to kind of round out the department, who actually brought that like rigor
Yes.
from their science
Yes.
into the department.
And could cover a lot of ground and distill these truths.
And were familiar with places to find these truths that weren't Facebook or something, right? Yeah.
Right. Last-ish question about the craft of advertising. You work not on the thing, not on the product, but the thing around the thing. The mythology, the story, the creative visual, like how people imagine it in their lives, the compelling messages that bring people closer to it. How far upstream do you go in understanding the product and understanding the business model of your client?
When you say how far upstream, what does that mean exactly?
I guess, do you take the consumer experience of the product as your beginning input, or do you figure out, well, what makes the body of this mini, like from an engineering perspective, interesting? Or when we go to Burger King, what is it about Burger King's staff systems, or what is it about Burger King's culinary creativity process that sets them apart? And is any of that an input in your work, or is it really just the immediacy of the product that you work
No, we would take it pretty far. And this doesn't mean much, but we always called it method advertising. Like, you had to use the product and be a user of the product. So when we had Microsoft, it was tough. Like, I had to say goodbye to all my Mac stuff and everything. And people thought we were on Macs doing, PC work. I wish.
Yeah.
In some ways I wish.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about retiring was getting back on Mac. But no, we would go all the way. With the Mini, we didn't have any new Minis. They didn't exist. So we took old Minis and we put them into common spaces with cameras and microphones, and just had people sit in them and then listen to the conversations that they had about the car. And that instructed a lot of like what we understood. It also led us to do our very first advertising we did for Mini was to original Mini owners, just mailers.
Oh, interesting.
Because we realized that they could poison the water really easily and say that's not a real Mini. Mm-hmm. And so we wanted them to fall in love with the product before we launched it to anyone beyond. So we had these sort of special treatment for, you already own a Mini. You're the first one to see this. You're the first one to be part of this.
Yeah, you're already in the club, and show them some
always preach to the choir.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, don't alienate them.
No. Yeah. People who say that's preaching to the choir. It's like, yes. The choir will be there always.
Right. And you need the choir.
You need them.
You need the choir.
They're the ones that are then disseminating that most passionate aspect of the brand.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, we would go Burger King. We worked in Burger Kings, We'd fry fries and, do all the different jobs and interview everybody up and down. And we were making a brand book, and one of the rules of the brand book that was really hard for the client was there can be nothing in the brand book that the on the line employee wouldn't understand and wouldn't be able to read.
That's a great constraint.
Yeah, it was difficult.
Difficult, but
the document was great.
Pretty genius.
Yeah, the document was great.
Because you got to say it simple.
Here's the rules for the CEO and the guy in the line.
Yeah. That's good. No highfalutin language,
Yeah.
No talking
or stuff
auteurs.
That they can't hear, because it's just it's like,
right.
Then if they can't hear it, it shouldn't be a thing.
Right. Because that's how people touch the brand, right? Is the experience. Yeah, in the stores.
Yeah, we would often do a brand book that was for the company to understand itself, as we understood them, and then said, here's what you are. Then we'd do these books that they weren't they generally, in the case of Mini, it was one and the same. The first book of Mini, that was a nice little piece. That was the same book that they had internally. But generally, we would create this brand book that was only for the organization to understand itself, and then you could make work.
You strike me as someone in leading an organization that was simultaneously highly industrious, but not in a rush.
I probably was more in a rush. Then. Yeah.
But just things like, oh, we're going to build a brand book for you, or we're going to get a Mini and put microphones in it and listen to what people have to say. A lot of people would be like, oh, that's a nice to have, but we got to get a campaign out the door, right?
Well, I was always of the mind that you look at the numbers that are thrown around in advertising, the amount of money that's spent, right?
Right. And so much of it is like indiscriminately spent on media.
And every number I've ever looked at, I'm thinking, what if I gave that amount of money to someone who needed it, or someone who, who like my cousin, who doesn't have a house, every budget, for some reason, it just always flowed there.
It's real dollars.
Yeah. So the idea that we couldn't do a thing, I'm like, are you not seeing how much money is here? Like, we got the time. We're industrious. Everyone here's a maker. That was the other sort of cultural thing is, the producers could produce.
Yeah.
They didn't need to call a producer that could produce.
Right.
They could produce.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was also this culture of industriousness.
We had line producers in the agency.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, our first head of production came from being a film line producer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's empowering. So in 2010, you were named Creative Director of the Decade by Ad Age, and you pulled a Jerry Seinfeld and decided to leave basically at the top of your career. Do you know this about Seinfeld?
No.
So Seinfeld, when he stopped doing Seinfeld, he was making, don't quote me on the exact numbers.
Oh, gosh.
Like $1 million a show.
Yeah.
Everybody loved it. And he quit. And people were like, what are you doing? You're at the top of your game. And he said, exactly. I do not want to be that guy who is in the twilight of their career, who is descending. And I don't know if that was your psychology. I'm just using it as shorthand. Mm-hmm. But talk to me about that decision of why did you go in that direction?
Well, I never thought I would stay in advertising. That was just, how you have these ideas about your life that are always there, but you don't even notice that they're there until the time comes for you to consciously act on them.
Absolutely.
That was just always there. It was just like, I'm not going to spend my whole life in advertising. It was kind of like that.
Yeah.
and so around the same time, there were nice accolades. The company is doing really well, and we are finishing out what had been a 10-year sale to the holding company. We were like their first acquisition. Really good relationship, and they really helped us grow. And we kept pushing the puts and calls, and so it could have been a really bad deal as early as we sold, but it wound up being a good deal. Mm-hmm. So all those things were sort of happening at the same time. I had moved the agency part of it out to Colorado because I had a lot of employees that were Midwestern in mindset. And at the time, people weren't really not everyone liked Miami. And so that was a nice, I could do that. I had 2 more years of control where I could do things like that. Mm-hmm. And that sunsetted. And so I just thought,
What did you then spend your time doing? For the next couple of years?
I got a call from Al Gore, and he said, hey, first call I got, he was like, hey, I saw you retired or whatever, left. And he said, I had worked not with him, but we had pitched something and lost it. But we had a nice relationship, and he said, I want you to work with me. I want anywhere from, 25% of your time to 100. And so that's pretty much what I did afterwards. Is I did about 2 years helping him construct like an in-house agency and do some programmatic stuff, some streaming events and things like that.
And it was for what? For what was the message?
Climate reality. It was climate
reality.
Yeah, climate reality. So rebranded what he had and did some other work. But in the end, for me, I at some point I felt like the arguing about the topic was more of an impediment than it was helpful. Mm-hmm. So I just sort of backed out of it. Because the economics are such that we're gonna move to renewables. Mm-hmm. They just get cheaper every day, and oil gets more expensive.
I did a little bit of math, mm-hmm. and you do some venture investing. The NASDAQ has returned on a rolling 10-year basis, like 5 times invested capital over 10 years, which mm-hmm. is really strong and it's liquid.
Yeah.
And the math that I did was that had you or anyone invested in Domino's Pizza when you took the account in 2009, it was $5.02 a share.
Okay.
And today it's $412 a share.
That's good.
Not including dividends. So these returns would be better if you include dividends.
Yeah.
That's an 82 times return and a 34% compounded annual growth rate.
Amazing.
So an unbelievable investment. We all probably should have invested in Domino's back in 2009 when you were taking the account, but you decided to take it kind of into your own hands with batshit crazy ventures.
Well,
So-
first
or-
I
or-
did a bunch of angel stuff.
Yeah. So tell me about that journey. Like, why'd you get into investing? What do you find enticing about it?
Well, at the time, I don't do it anymore. But at the time, what I told myself, which now I don't think is true, I told myself that that I wanted to stay in the game, and it kept me fresh and thinking and relevant maybe.
Yeah.
But really, I just wanted more money.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so you were actually motivated by the money of
I didn't know it. This is subconscious.
You later realized
this is
it.
later, and the way I realized is now we're going to go into journey a little bit. Are you all right with that?
It's journey time.
It's
this
journey
is
time?
where we start the journey.
Okay. If you have a billionaire, right, and they feel compelled to make another billion, they can tell you why, and it'd be the same things I just said: action, relevance, keeping fresh, keeping their mind in the game. But the truth is, at least in my case, and I think probably in their case, is the first billion didn't do what they thought it would do, which is make them feel safe.
Right.
And our culture tells us that money is going to make you feel safe. It's one of the false idols, and I didn't always have that relationship with it early on. I didn't care at all. Like, success for me was working with people you love, doing things that you love. That was my definition of success. That was the only thing I tried to work towards.
Beautiful.
And so I had success really early. But then at some point, the culture convinces you it's, hey, this money thing could make you feel pretty safe,
Yeah.
And I bought into it. And so I kept working on it. The guy that I went to art school with, Dave Schwartz, lifelong friend from the time we were 12, my brother, basically, lived at our house. I screamed at my parents, "I'm your real son," one time because I was feeling left out.
Like he was more loved.
He was getting all the love.
Yeah.
And he wasn't there when I said that, but
Yeah. But you're saying this to illustrate how close you two were.
very close, very close. And we spent our lives working together, and we spent our lives playing together. We met because we were both racing BMX bikes and as kids, several years ago, he and I were riding bikes down these downhill courses with jumps and stuff. And he was behind me, and it was, we were going through three jumps that get bigger and bigger that my son had named the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And I could hear his tires behind me, and you can tell how someone's riding, whether it's smooth, and he's riding beautifully. We go through the last jump, and the last jump's like 40 feet long. It's like, for me, it's enormous. And I hear his tires, and we make a left, we make a right, we make another left. I turn around to give him a high five, and he's not there. And it was like a magic trick. I was like, where's Dave? And I look up the trail, and he's laying in the trail, and I run up to him, and he's unconscious, and I'm rubbing his back, trying to get in. And that's not that uncommon. I'm not super worried. People get knocked out. He's not waking up. I roll him over, and I could see that it was like really serious at that point. Oof. And he passed away in my arms, and that was really painful. And it was, my mom had passed, now my brother had passed, and then a little later I had this accident where I got a pretty serious concussion. I hurt my neck. And it turned out that the next guy down the hill was a trauma surgeon. I was trying my CPR thing, right? And now we have this trauma surgeon. He and I get his heart going again, which I didn't even realize. I just could tell he wasn't breathing, you know? And then within 2 minutes, Mountain Rescue's there. There's a mask on him. And so, you know, he's getting air. And so his body makes it back to Denver, which was a blessing because his family could, you know, come into town, fly into town. People could be with him. But all these events, he later passed.
And did he ever regain consciousness?
No.
Yeah.
He passed there.
Yeah.
But you see it. So my mom, him, this other accident, and in my life, I've always had a good ability to move through things, right? Mm-hmm. And some of it we talked about, I think, right?
Yeah.
Just, and somewhere in this, I had lost that connection that I always had when I was working or just my whole life. If I had a question, I could just sit back and I could get an answer. And, you know, and I used it a lot for advertising. But that was always there, and somewhere that went away. Oh, wow. And so that was gone, and it wasn't really gone, but I was blocking it.
We were further from it. Or
You were blocking I was blocking it. Yeah. I didn't know it at the time, but like now I know I was blocking it. And I got desperate enough. I ran into a friend who'd done some ayahuasca journeys, and I was not getting better. I had essentially, I don't like the diagnosis. I don't think it's necessarily a thing, but PTSD. Yeah. If you touched my neck, I would flash back to that moment.
Right. Yeah. We can use that term colloquially for this purpose.
It's fine. It's fine for this.
But it was a highly traumatic moment that you had not recovered from.
And it was not moving into long-term memory even. It was very emotional, like present memory.
Right.
That was the feeling of it. So
I'm so sorry that you had to go through that.
Oh, everyone in this world goes through enormous pain, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone. We could talk about yours. Sure. You know what they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no one gets out unscathed, and everyone in their egoic mind has some sort of story that's like, I've had it worse than you know. To others, that's part of the ego's story.
Right.
I've had it worse than you know. So this friend of mine has done some of these ayahuasca journeys, and I'm like, wow, I'm desperate. I need to do something, and I don't do that, but I find a guy locally in Boulder, who does it with cannabis, and most people are skeptical about that. But Alan,
it is an eyebrow raise. When you first told me, like, I do ayahuasca ceremonies with cannabis. Yeah. I'm like, what does that even mean? So tell us, like, what does that even mean?
All it means is that you can transcend, right? And I don't think the substance has anything to do with it, really. Consciousness is always primary causational, right? Consciousness itself. So, but when you're stuck in consciousness, when you're veiled, sometimes you need to have the belief in a substance to open you up. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
And so for me, I couldn't have done it at that time without that substance.
Right.
But I've had many experiences like that since without the substance. Mm-hmm. But Alan Watts' favorite psychedelic, he said, was cannabis. And now this isn't the dirty weed from my youth that wouldn't probably do anything, I guess. Well, I mean, it's all in consciousness, so maybe it would.
No, but nowadays, I mean, in Colorado and California, it's pretty high tech.
And it's not apparently, according to my shaman, it's not the THC. It's the terpenes and things. I don't know a lot. Terpenes, yeah, thank you. I don't know a lot about it. People think I moved to Boulder because I wanted to smoke weed. It's not my thing, you know. Yeah. No, I don't mind it, but it's not my thing.
But you've experienced it ceremonially.
and just casually too.
Yeah.
But not like.
But you're not a
lot.
stoner.
I don't know where the line is, but no, I don't think so.
Okay.
So,
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So I do 2 days of journeying with this guy, and my first thing is I wanted, where's Dave, and is Dave all right? That was like, and anyone who's ever done this, if you haven't done this, if you think it's for you, I actually would say it was in the top 3 experiences of my life: getting married, having kids, and this. Like it's that big a deal. If you've done it, you often start with these landscapes, these like crystalline landscapes. It looks like a regular landscape, but they're crystalline and faceted, like the leaves of a tree would be shimmering. And so I was moving through these and saying, "Where's Dave? Where's Dave? Where's Dave?" And the universe just said, "What's a Dave?" At some point, it took a little while. You got to insist. It said,
Yes.
"What's a Dave?" And I'm like, "Oh my goodness, what is a Dave?" And I journeyed on that for a while, and physically, spiritually, emotionally, what a Dave would be, right?
Uh-huh.
And I came back. This is what it felt like. I came back with my homework, and I think this is a Dave,
Yeah.
And then I'm asking more questions, and I don't remember what these questions were, but they were not great. And I would just get what I called Zen zingers, like really funny, just slams across the net. And you just be like, yeah, oh, okay. Yeah. And finally, I, almost like out of exhaustion, I said, okay, well, when is Dave? And that was apparently a really good question. And so the landscape sped up, they folded, I went down, 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 and I came out on this plane of souls, what I understood as this plane of souls. And the wheels of samsara were like churning and picking up the souls and moving them through lifetime. They were like these concentric, almost flaming, like arcs.
So a highly visual experience.
Oh, yeah. Now, I don't think it was a real place. I think it was a construct, but within consciousness, I thought it was real for a little while.
Right.
But in retrospect, it's like, well, no, it was a model built for me to understand a thing, but it's built at full scale. Like it was as big as the universe. It was enormous.
It sounds like a dream experience, like the realness of a dream, the immersion of a dream.
It's different than a dream. It seems to be a lot more filled in, and the sense is that people say that it's more real. I find it more true. So
I see.
That's how you're in truth, learning truth.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got to see Dave, which was presented as all these gray blocks would then become these glowing blocks, and each block was the same size, different colors and different patterns and stuff. And it was like everything, and I understand this to be true now. At the time, it was just like, what? But everything that was Dave, which is a spirit incarnate for a period of time, right, still exists. It exists in the infinite now. In a different form, I can visit any of Dave.
Right.
And all lives were exactly the same size, including the baby that died in childbirth. All lives are complete in the way that they were what they needed to be. Uh-huh. So there's no lives cut short. There was so much, it was like a fire hose of learning. But the next day, I came back. I was supposed to integrate a lot of it. There was more and more and more and more. But I was supposed to, well, I should say one thing. Just coming back out of that and talking to the shaman, there was a healing. Like,
oh yeah,
like my ability to talk about what happened with Dave was, I would have been a puddle right now. I wouldn't have been able to get the words out. Mm-hmm. And 20 minutes later, I could talk about it. That hole got filled, and it just sort of, you think of the heart as an altar, and you have different ideas of what would make you safe.
Right.
You don't need to do anything to try to get money off the altar. You just allow what's naturally there, which is love. When I allowed that to sit on the altar, a lot of others, I'm not saying everything, a lot of other things fell off. And when it's not there, it's just not there. There's no feeling of sacrifice or feeling of oh boy, should I do this with money or what should no hand wringing. It's just, no, that's done.
Do you feel content?
Yeah, you feel deep.
No, I mean, do you?
Yeah, right now?
Yeah, I mean, do you feel in your life day to day, do you feel content?
It's different. Like the first thing that comes through, it's not just the journey. I got to say, if you do journeys and you just do journeys, you kind of come back to where you were to some degree. You have to have some sort of meditative practice, some sort of ability to get your mind quiet. And then you have to have access to really, they've been around for thousands of years, but really good teachings. Mm. You put really good teachings into a quiet mind, because the spiritual journey is an experiential journey. It's not a belief journey. You put those ideas into a quiet mind and you run the experiments. Does this hold water?
Yes.
Right? Is this one true? Can I find this one true? And so you're running almost like Einstein. You're running these experiments within consciousness. And as you do that, you that false self just sort of becomes thinner and thinner, I guess is the best way to.
Sure.
And you don't do anything except thin the misperception, and then what you are comes through. It upwells, right? And it's very foundational. And that for me, it showed up as happiness. So my happiness, which I always measured from, for some reason, 0 to 10, was always at a 7. Actually, it was 6.5. When I was a kid, my parents were Scientologists, and something happened in Scientology, and it moved. My happiness moved, and I noticed.
Oh wow!
And that's when I created the scale.
You moved it up, or it
went up?
It went
to 7. It went up. And I was like,
because of leaving the church, or because of participating?
It was something. It was some learning that I got in the church. And I don't know what it was.
Interesting.
Yeah, but I felt it change. I was like, whoa, that's new.
Huh.
It never budged the rest of my life to 57, right?
Yeah. I'm
working on this thing. It's a boulder that I can't move. And I'm doing everything I can to move it. I'm reading everything I can.
Yeah.
And then at some point I came across this teaching, and I was doing it, and it went like 7, 7.5, 8, 8.5, 9, 9. And then it's I don't use it anymore because happiness is actually just the realization of self.
Right.
And so it's very foundational. It's very solid. It's like a
because you're letting
go
of what doesn't serve you.
You just is, like the isness of you, and it needs nothing. And when you're not in that space, you hear things like that, and it sounds like gobbledygook. I get that.
Yeah.
But then later, so you ask about.
Yeah, well, you covered this earlier. You're not the best salesman.
Yeah. I don't want to sell anyone.
Yeah, great storyteller, great marketer.
It's an act of violence to try to convince someone to do anything.
I'm just joking.
But this thing came through as happiness at first, which is happiness to me. I think that this is true. Happiness and peace and love are all the same substance, on almost like at different temperatures. So peace is love frozen, right? And then love at room temperature is liquid water, like it's liquid,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And then happiness is that bubbling love. And so over
same
time,
element, different
same
state
element.
Of matter.
Yeah, this is how it feels to me in my experiments. And so now it's more of a sense of peace.
I always tell people, I'm a happy guy. I am very happy, but I'm not content. And I don't really worry about being happy. What I search for is contentment.
Interesting.
Is wanting nothing.
Yeah.
Because
that's peace.
I'm a happy, energetic guy.
Search for peace.
Yeah.
I would say, because contentment when you say contentment, the reason why I didn't have an answer for that is it seems to have a bit of conditionality to it. Certain conditions would allow for your contentment.
But peace is the more, base element of contentment.
Yeah.
I mean, peace is exactly what I should.
Well, unconditional love and unconditional happiness and unconditional peace are all the same thing. People don't think about the term unconditional love. What would that be? Right? That's I love you the same way I love my son.
Yeah.
It's maximal.
Right.
Only.
Right.
And so that's not our teaching. Our teaching in the egoic culture is love these people this much, love these people this much, and then the proper use of hate across these people. and and you're dialed.
Which is scarcity. Yeah, and a trap.
That's my goal right now. That's what I'm working on, is unconditional love through forgiveness.
Well, I wish you all the luck in the world in that journey.
Thank you.
And we'll have to definitely do a part 2 of this and check in in a few years. So it's
this much journey and this much advertising.
We've gotten this so substantive and so deep on this, though I'd love to bring it back to our kind of lightning round. Are you glad social media exists, or do you wish it never existed?
I'm glad it exists.
Favorite campaign that you've worked on?
Probably the mini campaign.
Mini,
yeah.
Right. I wish I'd done that. Favorite campaign you didn't work on?
It would be Chai a Day, and it would probably be some, Nike billboard or something, where they're like jumping from one side of the billboard to the other. Like some of that stuff was just glorious.
Yeah. What is the biggest mistake that companies make when telling their story?
Lying.
Yeah. Totally. That tracks.
Yeah.
But what is the most powerful force in swaying public opinion?
This isn't the highest self, right? We're dealing with like a lot of egos.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
So guilt and fear would be the two.
Ooh. It's interesting because the biggest mistake that companies make is lying. Mm-hmm. I think also a powerful force has got to be telling the truth, right?
Yeah, but I don't think that happens within the swaying of public opinion is, I was going politics. Maybe that's not where you're at.
Well, it's all related. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you most grateful for in your life right now?
This thing that happened along the way with the spiritual journey is, I can explain it this way. When I had the journey, it's almost like the periscope goes up. You can see the shore. And for me, I'm like, oh, I'm not that far. Like I can make it to shore. Shore means different things to different people, but to me, it means to go to the next level of creation.
I see.
Right? And probably not incarnate on the sphere again. It can mean a lot of different things, but I could see that possibility. As I came back and started working on it, it was very much like me. I want me to get over the wall. I want to get over the wall. I want it, right?
Yes.
And then at some point, because you have this realization of self as not separate from other, there's not a me anymore that needs to get out before or could get out before. And so that switched, and it was suddenly, oh, I could be the last one. I can, give everyone a boost, and then I'll go. And I've never had that feeling quite in that way. And I'm really grateful for that feeling where I genuinely just want like every brother and sister to be their most beautiful, true self.
A comfort in generosity and a comfort in love, universal love.
I think it's that false self fell away to the point where I didn't need to defend it or worry about it or work on it.
Beautiful. That is worthy of gratitude.
I'm very grateful for that. Miracle.
So, last question. You were the second guest on this show who has authored a cookbook. It doesn't need to be from the cookbook, but we ask everyone, what is one good recipe, a go-to recipe that you love to make for other people? Can you take us through it in cookbook level detail?
No. You could ask my wife. I never make anything.
Okay.
Like when we first started dating.
If she's traveling or she's gone, what do you make?
Peanut butter and jelly.
Talk us through the recipe.
Okay. I think most people are familiar with it though.
Well, do you toast it?
I don't toast. I don't. You know what I really love? Like I told her that I make stuffed shells. But she says I've still never made her the stuffed shells. I think I did once, and I can make stuffed shells. But I actually, peanut butter, honey, and banana sandwich.
Oh, yeah.
Is where I kind of rock.
Oh, yeah. That's like Elvis territory.
That's Elvis, yeah, for sure.
Because he would throw bacon in there.
And people say it's not good for you. It gets
you look
slammed.
Great. Plus,
it's got
cyclist.
Everything you need.
That's right. You got protein and fat from the peanut butter.
Yep.
You got fiber and sugar from the banana.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Some potassium
Do
in
you
there.
use a white bread or use a...
No, use a really nice
Yeah.
bread with lots of,
beautiful seeded or something,
Yes.
a whole grain. I mean, you
Yeah.
strike me as a whole grain.
Yes,
whole grain,
very much.
Whole grain bread
I
guy
toast
through and
that
through.
bread.
You do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the warmth,
to.
really works well with the peanut butter. Sometimes I'll even put a little bit of butter. Butter, toast,
Yeah.
butter, cow butter,
Yeah.
right? Peanut butter, then honey swirled in,
Oh, yeah.
and then slice your bananas however
You ever
like.
hang out with Justin Gold?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he puts honey in his peanut butter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they sell it even with
Yeah.
honey in it.
He's
yeah.
a great dude.
He is a great dude.
You've already given away your cell phone number.
Yeah.
But do you have a thing you want to point people to with Instagram or anything like that? Or are you content?
Yeah. No, I definitely one of my suggestions would be you don't want to have Facebook. You don't want to have LinkedIn. And I mean, I have an Instagram, but it's like not on my phone, and so I don't look at it. But it's there. I mean, you could look at old pictures of me on Instagram if you want to.
Well, and they're mostly you doing BMX tricks.
I think it's mostly bikes. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're a BMX fan, follow
Or
Alex
not.
Bogusky.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming in, and thank you for sharing your truth, Alex.
Yeah. Thanks for being an amazing interviewer.
My absolute pleasure.
I think it was one of the very best.
I'm honored to hear that. Thank you for tuning in to At Large. Today's episode was produced by Sick Bird Productions. Our theme song is Son of Sanford by Motion Worker. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and by email at atlargeshow.com. Follow me at SWH Norton on Instagram and Twitter, and DM me about the guests you want to hear on the show.